Hello, Anthony and Tara. My name is Dylan Oschuk, and I'm glad that you came to speak to me today. Today, I'm going to be guiding you through the estate planning process, as well as how you're going to reach both your financial and non-financial goals, and explain some other things that tend to happen during the process of estate planning. Now, before we get started in the estate planning process, I'd just like to go over a few details about your family, just to ensure that all this information is correct. So, Anthony, you're age 65 currently, and you are in excellent health, which is great. But you do realize that at the age you're at, your health could deteriorate in the next few years. Now, hopefully, that doesn't happen. Also, you own the Benson's Animal Care Center, which is a local animal hospital with 25 employees. And currently, as it is right now, you have an annual salary of $250,000. Now, your wife, Tara, you're currently age 50 and you are also in excellent health, which is great. You work as a CPA for an international accounting firm where you're currently a manager in the area of litigation support, and your annual salary equates to $50,000 per year. Now, Tara, you also have a daughter, Peyton, from a previous marriage who's 30 and living on her own. Now, it's been told to me that Peyton has a reputation for being financially irresponsible and owes a large amount of debts to numerous creditors. Now, the children from your marriage alone, we currently have Nicole at age 23, Ryan at age 21, and Danielle at age 5. Also, there's Marlene, which is age 70 right now, and Tara, that is your mother. Now, from what I've been told by you guys, she's not in very good health, but she is the widow of a substantial net worth. Now, Tara, you are the primary beneficiary of your mom's IRA as well as her estate, where you are the contingent beneficiary. The attorney has drafted a will which leaves her entire estate to you, Tara. This will provides that if Tara disclaims any or all of the inheritance, the disclaimed amount will be left in the trust for Tara's 4 children. Now, also, I'd like to note Anthony's nephew, which is Edmund Benson, which is age 17. Now, Edmund is severely disabled and has very few financial resources. Now, Anthony, from what you've told me, I know that you'd like to assure that Edmund has enough income to enjoy a reasonable standard of living without jeopardizing his eligibility for governmental assistance. Now, here's some economic related information that you guys had told me that I'd like to restate also. So, right now, you expect to see inflation on an average of 4% annually, both currently and for the long term. You have favorable banking relationships and have the ability of borrowing money. And you're also in the marginal income tax bracket of 35% for federal and 6% for state. On average, you pay 31% and 5% for federal and state tax, respectively. Capital gains are also taxed at 15% for federal, and there's no special rate at the state tax level. Now, the financial planning process for estate planning. Now, let me just explain this before we get going, just so we're all on the same page. So, estate planning is the process of planning for accumulation, conservation, and the distribution of an estate to effectively and efficiently accomplish both tax and non-tax objectives. So, in summary, estate planning is concerned with many of the same aspects of financial planning, as are income tax planning, investment planning, insurance planning, and retirement planning. In estate planning, the planner must implement all of these aspects in order to accomplish 3 objectives. 1. To preserve the wealth that others have helped create. 2. Allow the client to use that wealth as desired during his or her lifetime. And 3. Pass the greatest possible amount of that wealth to designated recipients in the appropriate form at death. Now, the estate planning process is as follows. The first step is to understand the client's personal and financial circumstances. Now, based off of what you've told me and the financial information that you've passed along, I've been able to study this in order to get a good understanding of where you guys are. The second step is to identify and select your goals. Now, these can be both financial and non-financial. Now, I know you guys have listed some of these, and I have those written down. And if there are to be some future goals that you decide to set, then we will surely discuss those together and find a way for you to achieve those. The third step is to analyze the client's current course of action and potential alternative courses of action. Now, based on the financial information that you've sent over, as well as our discussions, I have a good handle on the way of your current course of action, and I may or may not, depending on the circumstances, have some alternative courses which may benefit you in the long run. The fourth step is to develop these recommendations. The fifth step is to present the recommendations to you, the client. The sixth step is to implement the recommendations, assuming that you agree with these recommendations and would like to move forward. And the seventh step is to monitor the implemented recommendations. So this is to ensure that the recommendations I implemented are doing well and there's no need to change course. Now, I'd like to list and talk about your financial and non-financial estate goals. So after speaking with both of you, I've decided to list your financial and non-financial estate goals to ensure that you still agree with these goals and to ensure I didn't miss any of these items. So, as I know, your financial estate goals include that Anthony would like to continue to transfer some of his wealth to his children to avoid death taxes. You'd also like to reduce the amount of death taxes. And you'd also like to begin transferring assets to the children and Tara from your AATB, Family Limited Partnership. Some of your non-financial estate goals include establishing legal guardianship and care for your daughter Danielle, ensuring that Anthony's nephew Edmund is taken care of financially in the event that Anthony were to pass. You'd like to have the proper distribution of assets, as well as efficient distribution of assets upon death. Now I'm going to talk about the ownership state. So, since you didn't explicitly state where you live, I'm going to have to make the assumption that you are living in a common law state. I will also assume that Anthony, your ex-wife, also lives in a common law state for the purpose of today, since we have not been told otherwise. Legal property ownership. According to the statements of financial position, you, the Bensons, have two types of property ownership. These types of property ownership include fee simple ownership. So this is a kind of ownership that is absolute and gives the owner the right to use, possess, or dispose of property in any way they choose during their life and at death. Because there are no survivorship rights in such property, the property that is still owned at death must generally pass through probate. You also have some joint tenancy ownership. So this includes the right of survivorship, which only be included for 50% when the first spouse dies. Property that you currently have under split ownership, based on your statement of financial position, include your residence, personal property, and automobiles. Now let's talk about the differences between tenants in common and JTWROS ownership. Tenants in common includes a percent ownership of the estate depending on the amount paid. The basis is stepped up by the percentage of ownership in the estate, and it does have to pass through probate. So basically, to explain this, if me and a friend were to buy an item that was $100, I paid $70 and my friend paid the $30. Well, I would have 70% of the ownership and my friend would only have 30% of the ownership. Now, this is different in the JTWROS ownership, which entails a 50-50 split on the asset upon its passing into the estate. Now, this doesn't matter how much each party paid. It will just automatically go to a 50% split. Now, the basis is stepped up by 50%, and it also avoids passing through probate. Now, when we're considering issues such as consideration furnished, this will not apply since you, Anthony, and Tara are currently spouses to each other. Now, I'd just like to list some estate planning weaknesses, mistakes, and pitfalls. So, one of the potential mistakes is the failure to recommend necessary will changes. Now, this includes keeping up to date for changes in life, location, and assets. The improper disposition of assets, which is having assets where you don't want them to be. The improper titling of assets, which is when assets are not being titled for their expected purpose. The failure to provide business planning. Now, this can be a problem because not planning for unforeseen events and circumstances and their potential effect on the business can affect the overall outcome of the business in the long run. The lack of estate liquidity, which is the inability to pay taxes and expenses upon death. Improperly arranged life insurance policies, which is when there's improper amounts of coverage, beneficiary arrangements, ownership problems, and potential transfer issues. Ancillary probate is when assets are being placed in other states, which have to go through probate several times. And lastly, funeral arrangements. Now, this can be an issue because sometimes family members aren't aware of your funeral expectations. Now, here's some potential solutions for those. Now, for failure to recommend necessary will changes, I recommend that you review and update with an attorney to ensure correctness. For improper dispositions of assets, you should ensure that all assets are correctly titled and going where you want them. For improper titling of assets, you should make sure that all the assets are titled properly to reflect their intended purpose. For failure to provide business planning, you should establish a way to maximize value through health insurance and have plans in place for unforeseen circumstances. In the course of lack of estate liquidity, you should have funds readily available to pay these expenses. Improperly arranged life insurance policies, this can be solved by having contingencies, avoiding the unholy trinity, and ensure that there is an acceptable amount of coverage. For ancillary probate, my recommendation is to transfer the title to a separate legal entity prior to death. And lastly, funeral arrangements. I believe that you should make a detailed plan of what you'd like for your funeral arrangements so that they may be carried out. So, here are some current pitfalls that are faced in your situation. The first one is business planning. So, in the current position of the business plan, if Anthony were to die unexpectedly, there'd be no way to maximize the value of the animal care center. The second problem is there's ancillary probate. Now, this is an issue that you could face potentially in the future with Marlene's property if she does happen to live in a different state than you. The third potential pitfall is the life insurance. Now, on Anthony's second life insurance policy, there's the presence of the unholy trinity, since 3 entities are listed. This can cause issues down the road regarding tax liabilities. And the last one is funeral arrangements. Now, from what I'm aware of, there appears to be no directions in place for funeral arrangements. Now, these should be given to an individual that is likely to still be alive at that time in order to streamline the process and help out with the grieving process and anything else that may be included during that time. Now, lastly, I'd just like to take the time to thank you, Anthony and Tara, for your time. I know this can be a difficult subject to talk about, but I appreciate you guys coming in and trusting me with your estate and with planning it. Now, if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me whenever is convenient for you. I look forward to speaking with you guys soon and continue guiding you through the process of your estate plan. Thank you very much, guys, and have a great day.